Good morning, good morning. Let's check out some Nancy Guthrie updates. Here we go.
It may be time to rethink the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. From the start, a common assumption was that this was a relatively amateur operation. Premeditated, yes, but not that sophisticated.
An 84-year-old woman with a pacemaker and daily heart medication has been missing for 38 days. Dr. Phil McGraw just calculated out loud, on camera, exactly what that means medically. Exactly what happens to a body like Nancy Guthrie's when it is removed from its controlled environment, separated from its medication, and placed under the physiological stress of captivity for 38 consecutive days. He said it, quietly, precisely, and nobody in that room said a single word after he finished. There is a specific kind of silence that descends on a case when the professionals stop speculating and start calculating. When the tone shifts from, "we are looking for Nancy Guthrie," to something quieter, something more deliberate, something that does not get said on camera, but gets understood in every room where people with badges and subpoenas are sitting together reviewing evidence. That silence descended on the Nancy Guthrie investigation weeks ago. The public felt it without being able to name it. The press felt it. The comment sections felt it. Something about the language coming out of the Pima County Sheriff's Office changed. Something about the pace of official statements slowed in a way that did not feel like a lack of information. It felt like a calculation, like people who knew more than they were saying and were carefully managing the distance between what they knew and what they released. Dr. Phil McGraw closed that distance. Not entirely, not with names and not with charges, but with a framework so specific, so grounded in the behavioral and forensic profile of this case, that it reframes every piece of evidence this investigation has produced. He appeared on camera and he said what the architecture of this crime has been pointing toward since the morning of February 1st, 2026. He said what the two DNA profiles, the rehearsal run, 9 days before the abduction, the belly band holster worn incorrectly, the covered doorbell camera, and the 41-minute operative window, have all been building toward as a conclusion. He described what would have happened to Nancy Guthrie, not what might have happened. What the evidence of this case, examined through the lens of behavioral science and criminal pattern analysis, indicates was the intended outcome.
I can't lie, this is a real sad story. I mean, I hope they find her. I pray to God they find her. Let's go
From the
ahead.
beginning. And that distinction between what happened and what was intended is where this case has been hiding its most important answer. Stay with this. Because what Dr. Phil said and what the science behind his statement actually shows are two different layers of the same revelation. And by the time this video reaches its final frame, you will understand both. Before the statement itself, before the framework he laid out, and what it means forensically, it is necessary to establish why Dr. Phil McGraw's public analysis of this case carries weight that goes beyond celebrity commentary. McGraw holds a doctorate in clinical psychology from North Texas State University. He spent years before his television career working as a trial consultant, a profession that requires the ability to read human behavior, assess credibility, and construct coherent psychological narratives from fragmented evidence. He has spent decades on camera interviewing individuals connected to high profile criminal cases, including perpetrators, victims, family members, and investigators. He has access to former law enforcement officials, forensic consultants, and behavioral analysts that most media outlets do not. And in the Nancy Guthrie case specifically, he has been one of the few public voices whose commentary has consistently tracked ahead of official statements rather than behind them. When McGraw sat down and described what he believes would have happened to Nancy Guthrie, he was not speaking from a position of casual observation. He was speaking from a position of synthesized analysis. He had access to the same public record available to every serious investigator of this case: the doorbell, camera footage, the FBI's physical profile of the subject, the forensic timeline, the two DSNA profiles, the ransom notes, the behavioral tells in the footage, the criminal history of at least one individual who has entered the public frame of this investigation, the geography, the methodology. He synthesized all of it and he reached a conclusion. And that conclusion, examined against the evidence this investigation has already confirmed, does not read like opinion. It reads like forensic logic carried to its endpoint. Here's what he said, and here's why the science agrees with him. McGraw's central assertion was this: Nancy Guthrie was not taken randomly. She was not taken opportunistically. She was taken as part of a transaction, a planned, structured, monetized transaction in which her value was calculated in advance, her removal was the opening action, and her continued existence was the leverage. His word for the architecture was deliberate. His word for the outcome, if that leverage was never paid out, was predictable. He outlined the behavioral profile of the individual or individuals responsible with a specificity that stopped short of naming anyone, while making the framework impossible to dismiss. The person who planned this, he stated, understood Nancy Guthrie's vulnerability not as an obstacle, but as an asset. Her limited mobility made containment simpler. Her pacemaker made her health a variable that could be weaponized. Her connection to a nationally recognized public figure, her daughter Savannah Guthrie of NBC's Today Show, made the transaction legible to anyone who needed to understand what she was worth, not as a person, as a piece of leverage in a negotiation that her captors intended to control entirely. McGraw then said the words that reframed everything. He stated that in cases with this specific architecture, where the target is elderly, medically dependent, and connected to wealth or public prominence, and where the planning demonstrates clear pre-operational intelligence, meaning the perpetrators knew the residents, the routines, the physical limitations, and the security setup in advance, the window for a survivable outcome narrows in a specific and documented way. It narrows not because of intent to harm, but because the physical reality of an 84-year-old woman with a cardiac pacemaker, removed from her medications, removed from her controlled environment, placed under the physiological stress of captivity, does not remain stable indefinitely. The human body has a timeline, and whoever planned this operation either understood that timeline and planned around it, or they did not. And the consequences of that failure are irreversible. That is what Dr. Phil revealed. Not a location, not a name, not a verdict. He revealed the operational logic of what was done to Nancy Guthrie and the biological reality that logic was working against from the moment she was removed from her home. McGraw's framework does not exist in isolation. It maps directly onto what the forensic record of this case has already confirmed. And that alignment is where the statement transforms from commentary into something closer to a finding. Start with the 9-day rehearsal. On January 23rd, 2026, a figure was captured on a neighbor's Ring camera moving through a route that, when overlaid against the approach path visible in the February 1st doorbell footage, follows the same corridor. 9 days before the abduction, someone ran the route. They tested access. They mapped the timing. They confirmed that the outer approach to Nancy Guthrie's residence could be navigated in darkness without triggering neighbor responses. This is not impulse. This is documented pre-operational reconnaissance. The January 23rd rote rehearsal is not an inference. It is on the record. Move to the 41-minute window. At 1:47 a.m., the doorbell camera was interfered with. At 2:28 a.m., Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker application disconnected from her phone. 41 minutes. That is when investigators believe she was physically removed from a residence she had occupied for over 5 decades. That timeline required a vehicle positioned and ready, a route planned and cleared, at minimum, one person inside and transport already in place outside. McGraw's framework describes a transaction with pre-calculated logistics. The 41-minute window is what pre-calculated logistics looks like in execution. Then there is the pacemaker signal. Law enforcement deployed a helicopter equipped with what sources described as CBS News as a signal sniffer, a Bluetooth detection device built to identify the transmission frequency emitted by an active cardiac device. A pacemaker communicates. If Nancy Guthrie is alive, that device is broadcasting. Law enforcement has been listening. They have not found it. Those two facts together are the most precise statement this investigation has made about her current condition, without making a statement at all. Dr. Phil's framework addresses something the public conversation around this case has consistently underweighted: the question of how many people were involved. His analysis points toward a coordinated operation, not a solitary actor. And the forensic evidence has already confirmed what that conclusion requires: 2 DNA profiles. That confirmation is the structural fact around which everything else in this case must be organized. One genetic profile was extracted from a nitrile glove found approximately 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home on February 13th, near a roadside that investigators identified as a probable exit corridor. The glove visually matched the gloves worn by the subject captured on the doorbell camera. That profile was submitted to CODIS, the FBI's combined DNA index system, containing more than 19 million offender profiles. No match. The genetic material belongs to an unknown male with no qualifying prior arrest or conviction in any system that feeds the national database. The second profile was recovered from biological material found inside the residence itself. The Pima County Sheriff confirmed publicly that investigators believe this DNA may belong to their suspect. The sample is described as a mixed profile, meaning more than one contributor's genetic material is present. Laboratory work to separate contributors is ongoing at a private facility in Florida. The two profiles do not match each other. 2 contributors, 2 genetic signatures, 2 separate individuals whose biological material is present at the same crime scene, separated by 2 miles of desert roadside. The glove profile on an exit route. The interior profile inside the home of an 84-year-old woman who could not walk 50 yards unassisted. One person covered the outside. One person worked the inside. The architecture of a 2-person operation is embedded in the DNA evidence and has been since February 13th. McGraw's framework requires exactly this structure. A planned transaction does not get executed by a single actor working alone against a target whose removal requires physical assistance across a property through a gate to a waiting vehicle in under 41 minutes without detection. The logistics demand coordination. The DNA confirms coordination was present. Those 2 statements are pointing at the same operational reality. There is a behavioral dimension to Dr. Phil's analysis that goes beyond logistics and into the psychology of who planned this. And it is the behavioral signature that narrows the field of possible architects in a way that statistics cannot fully capture. The subject on the doorbell camera moved, in the words of former FBI Special Agent Brianna Fox, with an almost casual confidence, like someone for whom this property was familiar territory. Former FBI Assistant Director Andrew McCabe, reviewing the same footage, noted the approach was not particularly furtive or concerned. These are not the movements of a stranger navigating unknown space. These are the movements of someone who has already been here, who knows where to step, who knows how the gate sits and what the camera angle covers. That familiarity did not come from the January 23rd rehearsal alone. A single walkthrough does not produce the calibrated confidence visible in the February 1st footage. That level of familiarity comes from accumulated proximity, from knowing a place over time, from having absorbed the geography of a specific property not through one observation, but through repeated exposure. McGraw addressed this directly. He described the perpetrators as possessing intelligence that extended beyond what surveillance alone could provide. Intelligence about interior routines, about specific vulnerabilities, about when she was likely to be near the front entrance, about how long the window between her last family contact and her first morning obligation actually was. That granular knowledge does not come from watching a house from the street. It comes from proximity to the information network surrounding a specific person over time. The belly band holster worn incorrectly on the outside of a thick jacket tells the same story from a different angle. Former FBI agents independently assessed the firearm setup as mismatched. Former FBI agent Steve Moore was direct. They do not match. This is not someone with professional weapons training. This is someone who understood that the visual presence of a weapon changes compliance dynamics, but lacked the habitual familiarity to deploy it correctly. Deep property knowledge, surface-level weapons performance. That combination describes someone close enough to the information to know everything about the target, far enough from operational experience to improvise the tools. Dr. Phil's characterization of this as a transaction is confirmed not by theory, but by documented ransom communications that began arriving at media outlets on February 3rd, 2026. TMZ received the first note. To Tucson. Television stations received copies. The letter contained precise personal details about Nancy Guthrie and her home, details unavailable in public reporting, details that narrow the field of possible authors to individuals with direct access to her life and property. A specific Bitcoin wallet address was included, 2 deadlines set, both passed. The wallet sat empty. A second communication arrived February 11th, distinct in tone. This sender claimed to have information about who took Nancy rather than claiming to hold her. 1 Bitcoin requested in exchange, approximately $66,000. TMZ confirmed to NewsNation the 2 notes were clearly not from the same author. A third note arrived February 13th, warning investigators to be prepared to go international to find the suspect. A reference most analysts concluded to the Mexican border, less than 90 minutes south of Tucson. The fourth note, received February 16th, was the one former FBI profiler, Jim Clemente, analyzed most precisely. The language described the sender as close to the events. It referred to the primary actor as the main individual, the vocabulary of someone describing an organizational hierarchy, a principal, and supporting roles. Clemente's characterization, close to the flame, not the person who lit it, someone who felt its heat before the rest of the world did. 4 communications, at least 2 distinct authors. A transaction architecture built around Bitcoin, deadlines, and information asymmetry. The transaction McGraw described was not a retrospective framework. It was the design the evidence has been describing since February 3rd. As of the most recent confirmed reporting, the Nancy Guthrie investigation has entered what the Pima County Sheriff's Department formally described as a focused detective phase. The full-scale surge operation of the early weeks has transitioned to a dedicated unit, specifically assigned to this case for the long term. The statement was unambiguous. This remains an active investigation and will continue until Nancy Guthrie is located, or every available lead has been exhausted. The forensic genealogy process initiated on the gloved DNA profile is running. Investigative genetic genealogy, the same methodology that identified the Golden State Killer after 4 decades, does not require the subject to have submitted their own DNA to any database. It requires only that someone in their extended family tree did, a cousin, a sibling, a parent who uploaded to Ancestry or 23, and me or MyHeritage, without any awareness of what that data would eventually help locate. The probability that the unknown male whose genetic material was extracted from that glove has kept his entire extended family out of every commercial genealogy database and every state CODIS feeder system approaches statistical near zero. The tree is being built, branch by branch, name by name. Every elimination narrows the field. Every confirmed relative moves the investigators, 1 node closer to the end of the line where the name waits. Simultaneously, the vehicle captured on a security camera approximately 2.5 miles from Nancy Guthrie's residence at 2:30 a.m. on February 1st, 2 minutes after her pacemaker application went dark, is being cross-referenced against cell tower data from every telecommunications tower along that corridor. Every device that moved through that 2.5-mile stretch between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. on February 1st transmitted a signal to a tower. Every signal was logged. Digital forensic specialist Heather Barnhart, who worked directly on the Brian Koberger investigation, stated it precisely. Your phone is the silent witness to your life. The infrastructure that makes people feel invisible in the dark is the same infrastructure that records every movement they make through it. The Walmart backpack, the 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker sold exclusively at that retailer, is being traced through purchase records and secondhand transaction platforms. The belly band holster, described by Sheriff Nanos as having unique characteristics, is being tracked through gun stores across Tucson. The $1 million reward announced by the Guthrie family on February 24th is sitting on the table in front of every person who has any information about what happened on the morning of February 1st. $1 million does not simply reward cooperation. It prices silence. And the price it sets for silence is one that the architecture of this operation, with its multiple actors, its pre-operational communications, its ransom demands from at least 2 separate individuals, cannot sustain indefinitely across everyone who knows any piece of what happened. Someone in the ring around this crime is doing the math right now. Someone is calculating the distance between what they know, what they owe, and what seven figures would change about their life. That calculation always resolves. It always resolves toward disclosure. The question is only timing. Dr. Phil McGraw sat down on camera and said what the behavioral science and the forensic evidence of this case have been building toward since 1:47 a.m. on February 1st, 2026. He described the transaction. He described the leverage. He described the biological reality working against Nancy Guthrie's survival with every day that passes without her medications, without her controlled cardiac environment, without the daily medical management that kept an 84-year-old woman with a pacemaker functioning in her home for 5 decades. He said, the science backs it. The evidence confirms the architecture he described, and the investigation, with its genealogy databases running and its cell tower data cross-referenced and its $1 million reward sitting in public view, is moving toward the name at the end of that family tree, with the same quiet inevitability that it has been moving toward since the morning investigators walked through a front door in the Catalina foothills and understood immediately that what they were looking at was not an accident. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She has a pacemaker. She has been absent from the home she occupied for more than 5 decades for over 4 weeks. She was specifically targeted, specifically planned for, specifically removed by at least 2 individuals who left their genetic material at the scene and on the exit road, and whose family trees are being built in a laboratory in Florida at this moment. The science will deliver a name. It always does. Dr. Phil described what happened to her. The DNA will describe who made it happen. She deserves to be found. This case is not over. If you have been watching this investigation from the beginning, drop a comment right now and tell us where you are watching from. Tell us what Dr. Phil's statement changes about how you understand what happened. Tell us what the forensic genealogy is going to deliver when it reaches the end of that tree. This community has been ahead of the official timeline from the start. Subscribe now and turn on notifications. The next video goes live the moment a named suspect emerges or DNA results become public. That update will reframe everything this video has laid out. You need to be in the room when it happens. Share this with everyone following this case. The more eyes on the evidence, the harder it is to stay invisible. We are not stopping, not until she is found.
I believe somebody knows what happened. I believe somebody knows exactly what happened to her. I don't know why they not saying nothing. I'm just being honest. I don't know why they not saying nothing. She has been gone for a minute now, and they still haven't found her. And it's sad. It's just a sad situation that she's been gone this long. She's been gone since last month, and it's like nobody knows what's going on. But I don't really believe. I believe somebody knows exactly where she's at and exactly what's going on. For some reason, they're just not saying much, and it's sad. It's just a sad situation, and I pray to God that they find this lady. I mean, I really do. I pray that her family and friends get some kind of, what's happening, what's going on, because like I said, I believe somebody knows exactly what's going on. For some reason, they not saying nothing, and I don't know why they not saying nothing, but I mean, the only person that knows is God. He is the only one that knows what's going on in this situation. And I pray that the family gets some kind of answers, what's going on, and let's see some other stuff. Let's go to this video.
Yeah, so we spoke with a neighbor today who I hadn't spoken to yet, who lives right around the corner from Nancy, very, very close, has lived here for a long time, knew Nancy, they used to walk together. She had a very interesting story, Jesse, because she says she saw a suspicious man walking in the direction of Nancy's house sometime around February 11th, which is a very significant date because that is the date that we know FBI agents were asking other neighbors if they had any Ring camera footage from that day. Listen to what she told me, Jesse.
So this is my window that I'm getting ready in the morning, and I saw him out there. So I couldn't make out his face. Well, he was in kind of street clothes, not shoes that you'd walk in, and he had a baseball hat really low, and he was kind of hunched over, and he was kind of looking around, and he just didn't fit. And he wasn't going terribly quickly like a normal person that's getting exercise. He's kind of going slowly, and when he walked by this street, he really took a long look at it.
And I actually misspoke. I said February 11th. I actually meant January 11th. So it would have been a couple of weeks before Nancy went missing on February 1st. And all the neighbors in this, it's the kind of neighborhood, they know everybody. They know, if someone doesn't look like they're normally here. It's that kind of a place. So that really, really stood out to her. And she says she has since talked to the FBI about it.
You know what's so interesting? I'm really happy you did that interview. Sometimes we don't think about what's that community going through. Obviously, there are those who knew and loved and care about Nancy, but they have been at the focus of this for weeks. They've been living through this for weeks on top of the fact they were probably incredibly nervous in the first few days about their safety in the community. Which brings me to an overarching point. What is happening in the overall investigation as far as you can see? Is it winding down? Hopefully not. Are they still canvassing? I read a report maybe there's no more cadaver dogs out. Are they at a roadblock right now? Are there things going on behind the scenes? What can you tell us?
Well, we're hoping that there are things going on behind the scenes, Jesse. She had something really interesting, though, to tell me, that neighbor. Her sister also lives in the neighborhood, Jesse, just a few blocks away. And she says that the FBI came to her sister's house. 2 FBI agents came inside, wanted to look in her garage, and that her sister was suspicious that they were actually real FBI agents. This was a couple of weeks ago. So her sister called 911 after they left and said, look, I think I have a strange feeling about these FBI agents that showed up. Turns out like 7 detectives show up, more FBI agents, and they say, yeah, you're right, we don't think those were real FBI agents. They end up doing this massive investigation in her house. They're fingerprinting. They're there for 4 hours. They take her DNA. After all of that, they say, actually, we just now realized that they were FBI agents, which just kind of shows that there were some miscommunications happening in the beginning. Listen to what she said about that, Jesse.
So she called 911, and within 15 minutes, 10 minutes, there were 7 police cars, 4 FBI agents, said it wasn't the FBI. She was terrified. They swabbed her, fingerprinted the entire house.
They swabbed her mouth.
They swabbed her mouth.
DNA, wow.
Yeah, and then were there till the middle of the night, and then just left, and she was terrified. So the next day, at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, she got a call from the large group of FBI agents that were there and said, oh yeah, by the way, that woman was an FBI agent. We don't really know who the guy was, but she was, so you're fine.
So what a strange situation, Jesse, that they took it so seriously that they spent half the night at her house investigating whether it was fake law enforcement. Come to find out, they just didn't realize that it actually was the FBI, apparently. Just a very, very strange story.
Why am I not surprised by this? I mean, part of the narrative of this whole case is a question mark over the investigation, the back and forth between the Pima County Sheriff's Office and the FBI jurisdiction, who's leading it. Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download.
Wow, like I said, what a crazy story. I mean, FBI fake. It was supposed to be a fake FBI. They come to find out it was real FBI. This story is getting crazier and crazier by the day. And like I said, my opinion is I hope and pray that they find her, because like I hope they find her for the family, the friends, the neighbors. I hope they get some kind of clearance from this. I mean, just a sad story that I hope ends eventually, because like I pray that that they find her, but I don't know. I mean, it's all in God's hands. God knows what's going on, and the people that got her knows what's going on. So figured I'd put this, update up on here. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Hopefully everybody have a great day. Be safe. I'm out. Love you all. Peace.